There's a certain kind of person who walks into a room and the entire atmosphere adjusts around them, not because they're loud or trying to dominate, but because they feel solid, anchored in a way that's rare. You've probably wondered what gives someone that quiet magnetism. It's not looks or charm. According to depth psychology, it's the result of an inner architecture that hasn't been fractured. Most people, without realizing it, are split. The face they show the world, the carefully crafted persona, is constantly at war with the parts of themselves they've locked away. This internal civil war isn't invisible. It leaks out as nervous energy, a need for validation, a subtle desperation that others can sense but can't name. True presence isn't about performing confidence. It's about ending the internal split. When you stop running from your own depths and stop seeking approval from every passing glance, you develop a different kind of gravity. It's not flashy. It's a steady pull. This video explores 6 foundational habits, drawn from the work of Carl Jung, that forge this unshakable inner strength. This isn't about becoming a more impressive version of yourself for others. It's about constructing a self so firm on the inside that you no longer need to brace yourself against the world. If you've ever felt like you're performing life instead of living it, like you're watching yourself from the outside, this is the roadmap back to your own center. Number 1. Anchor in the flesh to still the trembling mind. The first and most fundamental habit is learning to live fully inside your own body. This sounds simple, but it's where almost everyone leaks their power. We abandon our bodies hundreds of times a day. You're in a conversation, but your mind is already rehearsing what to say next. You're sitting down to eat, but your attention is glued to a screen. You walk from one place to another, but you're lost in a mental movie about the past or future. The body is physically present, but you are not. And when this becomes your default state, your ego loses its anchor. It starts floating in a sea of other people's opinions, anxieties, and projections. It becomes fragile, easily swayed by a harsh word or a judging glance. This video explores 6 foundational habits, drawn from the work of Carl Jung, that forge this unshakable inner strength. This isn't about becoming a more impressive version of yourself for others. It's about constructing a self so firm on the inside that you no longer need to brace yourself against the world. If you've ever felt like you're performing life instead of living it, like you're watching yourself from the outside, this is the roadmap back to your own center. Number 1. Anchor in the flesh to still the trembling mind. The first and most fundamental habit is learning to live fully inside your own body. This sounds simple, but it's where almost everyone leaks their power. We abandon our bodies hundreds of times a day. You're in a conversation, but your mind is already rehearsing what to say next. You're sitting down to eat, but your attention is glued to a screen. You walk from one place to another, but you're lost in a mental movie about the past or future. The body is physically present, but you are not. And when this becomes your default state, your ego loses its anchor. It starts floating in a sea of other people's opinions, anxieties, and projections. It becomes fragile, easily swayed by a harsh word or a judging glance. When you're not anchored in the body, you swing between 2 poles. You either shrink, trying to become invisible, or you puff up, talking too much, filling the space with noise to prove you exist. Both are desperate acts of an ego without a foundation. Jung wrote that the body is the visibility of the soul the psychological experience of the body. They are not 2 things, but one. When you contract your body in fear, your soul contracts. When your body rests in safety, your soul has room to expand. Grounding yourself in the body is an internal, quiet practice. You start to notice your breath. You feel the weight of your body in the chair. You sense your feet on the floor. You stop the frantic need to react instantly. These aren't dramatic changes, but they create a seismic shift in your experience. Your nervous system begins to downshift from survival mode to a state of calm awareness. And when your nervous system is calm, your ego stops fighting for its life. Many people try to buy presence by learning techniques, how to hold eye contact, how to modulate their voice, how to stand with confidence. But if you're absent from your own body, these techniques feel like a suit of armor that doesn't fit. Jung didn't advocate for building an external image when the inner world is in chaos. He knew that a floating ego will cling to anything external to feel real, and that very clinging is what kills your natural magnetism. Think of the mind as a kite and the body as the string. If the string is loose, the kite tumbles and crashes, a slave to every gust of wind. But when the string is taut, the kite can soar without losing its orientation. Living in the body is pulling that string taut. It's not about trapping the mind, but about giving it a home base. With a home base, the mind is no longer carried off by every anxious thought or unconscious impulse. When you start living in your body, something shifts. You stop trying to be strong. You simply are stable. And people feel that stability as safety, as confidence, as a kind of unspoken authority. You don't need to perform to be seen. Your presence, by itself, is enough. This state isn't rigid or forced. It's paradoxically soft. Shoulders relaxed, breath deep, eyes open but not searching. When this becomes your default, you have built the only foundation upon which true mental strength can stand. Number 2. Master the economy of words to retire the mask. Once you begin to settle into your body, the next shift happens naturally. You start to speak less, not because you have nothing to contribute, but because you no longer need a constant stream of words to validate your existence. This is a delicate stage. Many people can hold a peaceful silence when they're alone, but the moment they enter a social dynamic, they lose all their hard-won inner weight. They start filling every gap, explaining, defending, justifying. In daily life, we think of speech as mere communication, but through the lens of depth psychology, speech is the primary tool of the persona. The persona is the mask we wear to be acceptable to the world. And when the persona is in control, our words don't come from our center. They come from a fear of being misunderstood, overlooked, or deemed unimportant. Jung had a sharp definition. The persona is what one is not, but what oneself and others think one is. When you talk too fast, over-explain, or feel a compulsive need to get your point across, you're not communicating. You're defending an image. Others might not consciously know what's happening, but they feel it. They sense the urgency, the effort, the subtle desperation for approval. When you start living in your body, something shifts. You stop trying to be strong. You simply are stable. And people feel that stability as safety, as confidence, as a kind of unspoken authority. You don't need to perform to be seen. Your presence, by itself, is enough. This state isn't rigid or forced. It's paradoxically soft. Shoulders relaxed, breath deep, eyes open but not searching. When this becomes your default, you have built the only foundation upon which true mental strength can stand. Consider the trajectory of someone like the writer and thinker Nassim Taleb. In his younger days, he was known for being sharp and combative in debates, always ready with a retort. But over the years, he evolved. He learned the power of silence. He let others speak. He sat with the discomfort of a lull in conversation, and when he did speak, it was often a single, dense sentence that could change the entire direction of a discussion. He realized that talking too much meant abandoning his inner position, while silence allowed him to hold it. From a Jungian perspective, this is the transition from persona to self. The persona is noisy. It needs constant affirmation through sound. The self is quiet. It isn't afraid of silence. It doesn't need external chatter to feel solid. And it is this capacity to remain silent, to not rush to fill the void, that others perceive as weight, as depth, as substance. Think of speech as a vessel for energy. If you pour that energy into 1,000 tiny cups, it becomes diluted and weak. The speaker feels drained, and the listener feels scattered. But if you hold that energy back, reserving it for only the moments that truly matter, then when you do speak, your words carry a natural force. They don't need to be loud or persuasive. They land with the weight of meaning. Imagine a room cluttered with furniture. It feels cramped and chaotic. But when you clear the space, leaving only the essential pieces, the room opens up and breathes. Speech is the same. Speaking less doesn't make you poorer. It makes your inner world more spacious. And in that spaciousness, your true presence becomes visible. The fear that drives compulsive talking is not a fear of having nothing to say. It's a fear of silence. Silence forces us to sit with ourselves, with our insecurities, with the terrifying possibility that we might not matter. But Jung taught that the very places we most want to avoid are the doorways to growth. When you stop using words as a shield, you start to hear your own inner voice clearly for the first time. Speaking less isn't about becoming aloof or disengaged. It's about shifting from reaction to intention. You no longer speak because you fear the gap. You speak because you have something to offer. And when you speak from that place of intention, people listen differently. Not because you're dominating, but because you're not trying to. Jung understood that depth isn't built by revealing everything, but by the capacity to contain. To contain a thought before speaking, to contain an emotion before reacting, to contain silence without panic. When you can contain, the persona naturally steps aside and the self emerges. The practice is simple. Before you speak, pause for a single breath, not to craft a better sentence, but to ask yourself, is this coming from a genuine place or from a fear of being unseen? Just asking the question is an act of reclaiming your energy. Try it for one day. Speak only when it is necessary. Notice the discomfort. Sit with it. That discomfort is the birthplace of inner weight. Number 3, embrace resistance to expose and integrate the shadow. The moment you stop filling the world with noise, you're left in a quiet room with yourself. And in that quiet, something uncomfortable inevitably surfaces. You start to see the parts of you you've been avoiding. This isn't about your image anymore. This is where you meet the shadow. For Jung, the shadow isn't some dark, evil entity to be destroyed. It's simply the sum of all the parts of yourself you've rejected in order to be loved and accepted. Your fear of failure, your anger, your weakness, your unacceptable desires, your need for approval. The shadow forms not because you're bad, but because you learned, early on, that certain parts of you were not welcome. Jung wrote, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. When you refuse to look at your shadow, it doesn't disappear. It goes underground and starts running your life from the basement. It whispers in your ear, disguising itself as practicality or self-care or just being realistic. The danger isn't that the shadow is powerful. The danger is that you don't even know when it's making your choices for you." I once knew a woman, a talented artist, who came to therapy not because of a crisis, but because of a pervasive sense of numbness. From the outside, her life looked fine. She had a supportive partner, a decent job. But inside, she felt like she was watching her life on a screen. When we started digging, a pattern emerged. Whenever she faced a choice that involved risk, showing her art, having a difficult conversation, setting a boundary, she would unconsciously choose the path of least resistance. Not because she was lazy, but because the discomfort of the hard path was unbearable. Hard, for her, wasn't climbing a mountain. It was sending an email with her portfolio attached. It was saying no to a friend's request. It was finishing a painting when the initial excitement had faded. She avoided these moments because of a deep, shadowy fear. The fear of being seen as selfish, of failing, of disappointing the good girl image she had built her entire identity around. That fear was her shadow. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, insidious, and utterly paralyzing. Psychologically, avoidance offers an immediate, powerful reward. Every time you choose the easy way, the discomfort vanishes instantly. Your brain learns that avoidance equals safety. But the bill always comes due. Over time, you lose faith in your own ability to endure. You start to feel weak, fragile, incapable. But the truth is, you never actually tested your own strength. You just kept running. Think of it like a muscle you've never used. The first time you try to lift a weight, it's shaky and uncomfortable. Everything in you wants to put it down. But if you don't quit at the first sign of strain, the muscle adapts. It gets stronger, not because you forced it, but because you gave it the chance to grow. Facing the shadow is the same. When you let your conscious mind stand in front of it, when you feel the fear and don't turn away, a new kind of strength is forged. Choosing the hard path isn't about seeking out pain or being a martyr. It's about a simple, radical act, staying. When the discomfort arrives, you don't need to win. You don't need to be a hero. You just need to not run. In that moment of not running, your nervous system learns a new truth. I can handle this. And from that experience, genuine will is born. Not willpower as a concept, but as a felt, physical reality in your body. Psychologically, avoidance offers an immediate, powerful reward. Every time you choose the easy way, the discomfort vanishes instantly. Your brain learns that avoidance equals safety. But the bill always comes due. Over time, you lose faith in your own ability to endure. You start to feel weak, fragile, incapable. But the truth is, you never actually tested your own strength. You just kept running. Think of it like a muscle you've never used. The first time you try to lift a weight, it's shaky and uncomfortable. Everything in you wants to put it down. But if you don't quit at the first sign of strain, the muscle adapts. It gets stronger, not because you forced it, but because you gave it the chance to grow. Facing the shadow is the same. When you let your conscious mind stand in front of it, when you feel the fear and don't turn away, a new kind of strength is forged. Choosing the hard path isn't about seeking out pain or being a martyr. It's about a simple, radical act, staying. When the discomfort arrives, you don't need to win. You don't need to be a hero. You just need to not run. In that moment of not running, your nervous system learns a new truth. I can handle this. And from that experience, genuine will is born. Not willpower as a concept, but as a felt, physical reality in your body. The artist started with tiny steps. She sat with the anxiety of an unfinished canvas without opening her phone. She expressed a preference for dinner without apologizing for it. She felt the guilt of disappointing someone and didn't immediately text them to make it right. Each time, the discomfort was there. But the important thing was this: she didn't collapse. And after each time, a new belief crystallized. I don't have to run. Psychologists call this building self-efficacy through action. Will isn't something you summon by telling yourself to be strong. It's the accumulated evidence that you can stay with difficulty and survive. As that evidence piles up, his shadow loses its grip. Not because it's gone, but because you've finally seen it. You've brought it into the light. A subtle trap is that the shadow rarely blocks you with obvious negativity. It blocks you with very reasonable-sounding excuses. I'll do it tomorrow. I need more rest. It's not the right time. These aren't wrong in isolation. But if they always appear at the exact moment you need to step forward, they are a mechanism of the shadow designed to keep you small. Choosing the hard path is recognizing that voice and, with compassion, choosing to move anyway. This doesn't make you tougher. It makes you more real. You stop living by the law of avoiding discomfort and start living by your capacity to contain it. And when you can contain it, you are no longer afraid of yourself. That is the foundation of a different kind of strength, durable, quiet, and true. Number 4, gather your attention to consolidate psychic energy. So you've stopped running. You've faced the shadow. You're choosing the harder path. But still, you might feel a strange sense of depletion. Not the exhaustion of conflict, but a kind of scattered feeling, as if your life force is being siphoned off through 1,000 tiny leaks. You're present, but you're not whole. This is the next frontier. You've stopped the big leaks, the avoidance, the performance, but your attention is still being stolen. And in the modern world, attention is the most valuable and most vulnerable resource you have. It's the currency of your psychic energy. In an old Norse myth, the god Odin sacrifices his eye at Mimir's well in exchange for wisdom. The common interpretation focuses on the loss, but the deeper meaning is about the gain. By giving up the ability to look everywhere, he gains the ability to look deeply. One eye wanders, one eye sees the essence. This is a perfect metaphor for individuation, the process of becoming whole. It's about reclaiming your attention from its constant outward dispersal and turning it inward, toward your own center. Not looking at more things, but looking deeply enough at a few things to let them nourish you. Most people do the opposite. They scroll, they click, they consume. Their attention is pulled in so many directions it can never settle anywhere long enough to create depth. And without depth, psychic energy cannot accumulate. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. You can pour and pour, but it will never be full. A day packed with stimulation still ends in emptiness. This doesn't make you tougher. It makes you more real. You stop living by the law of avoiding discomfort and start living by your capacity to contain it. And when you can contain it, you are no longer afraid of yourself. That is the foundation of a different kind of strength, durable, quiet, and true. Number 4, gather your attention to consolidate psychic energy. So you've stopped running. You've faced the shadow. You're choosing the harder path. But still, you might feel a strange sense of depletion. Not the exhaustion of conflict, but a kind of scattered feeling, as if your life force is being siphoned off through 1,000 tiny leaks. You're present, but you're not whole. Jung saw that psychic energy isn't neutral. It flows wherever you direct your care, your concern, your focus. He wrote, "Where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, their love is lacking. The one is the shadow of the other." Energy follows meaning. When your attention is fractured across 100 different inputs, your energy is fractured with it. The problem isn't that you're tired. The problem is that you're letting your life force scatter because you haven't built a strong enough center to hold it. This state is insidious because it's so hard to notice. You don't feel like you're avoiding anything. You just feel tired, restless, vaguely dissatisfied. You try to fix it by resting more, by finding a new hobby, by changing your environment. But the root cause remains. Your attention no longer belongs to you. Look at an ordinary day. You're working, but your mind is on a past conversation. You're talking to a friend, but you're thinking about what you need to buy at the store. You're trying to rest, but you're scrolling through images of other people's lives. Nothing ever truly closes. And when nothing closes, energy doesn't return to you. It hangs in the air, suspended, like 100 browser tabs open in your mind, slowly draining your battery. This isn't about doing less. It's about being more fully in whatever you are doing. Jung didn't advocate for withdrawing from life. He advocated for being whole within life. And wholeness happens when you stay with an experience long enough for it to complete its cycle. The reason people resist reclaiming their attention is that when the distraction stops, something uncomfortable emerges: emptiness. In that emptiness, you might feel a wave of sadness, or boredom, or meaninglessness. But this isn't a sign you've done something wrong. It's a sign that the energy you were scattering has returned home. And what has been neglected for so long is finally surfacing to be healed. If you rush to fill that emptiness with more noise, you're just reopening the leak. But if you stay with it, the psyche can begin to reorganize itself. Jung saw silence and emptiness not as enemies, but as the very conditions for inner restructuring. When your attention stops running wild, the scattered pieces of your psyche have a chance to find their natural order. No forcing, no analyzing, just staying. As your attention begins to gather, you'll notice a shift. You stop trying to focus. Focus becomes the natural byproduct of energy that isn't leaking. You do one thing and actually finish it. You listen without mentally preparing your response. You rest without needing to consume. Life isn't necessarily easier, but it feels less exhausting. Imagine a car with a fuel leak. It sputters and overheats. But when the leak is sealed and the fuel is directed, the engine runs smoothly. You don't need more fuel. You just need to stop the leaks. Reclaiming attention isn't about forcefully controlling your mind. It's about a gentle, persistent practice of noticing and returning. Every time you realize you've been pulled away, and you gently bring your focus back to the present moment, the sensation of your breath, the weight of your body, you are gathering a piece of your scattered self. No judgment, just return. This simple act, repeated thousands of times, is how you rebuild your inner container. Number 5. Forge the body to withstand the weight of reality. You've anchored in the body, mastered your speech, faced your shadow, and gathered your attention. You feel more centered than ever. But then life happens. A crisis at work, a conflict with a loved one, a financial setback. And you realize, with a jolt, that your newfound inner peace is fragile. It shatters the moment real pressure is applied. This is the brutal truth that many on a spiritual or psychological path miss. Understanding is not endurance. Insight doesn't automatically translate to resilience. The question is no longer, how deeply do I understand myself, but how much can I actually hold? I met a woman named Sarah at a silent retreat. She was deeply introspective, highly sensitive, and could sit in meditation for hours, observing her thoughts with remarkable clarity. But outside the retreat bubble, she was a mess. A late night, a skipped meal, a difficult email, and her entire system would crash. She'd become irritable, anxious, and overwhelmed. Her mindfulness didn't help because her body couldn't hold the charge of real-life stress. She had built a beautiful upper story, the mind, on a foundation of clay. Sarah had treated her body as an afterthought. She fed it poorly, never moved it with intensity, and ignored its signals. She believed that if her mind was clear enough, the body would follow. But life doesn't work that way. Life doesn't ask about your insights. Life asks if you can still stand when it puts its full weight on your shoulders. Jung never saw the psyche as separate from the body. He famously said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." Maturity isn't achieved in a comfortable, intellectual space. It's forged when the whole person, mind and body, passes through pressure and doesn't break. If your body is weak, your mind will always be pulled down by its biological reactions. Stress isn't just a thought, it's a physiological event. Heart rate spikes, breath shortens, muscles tense, cortisol floods your system. A body that's trained to handle load, to recover, to endure, can regulate these reactions. A sedentary, deconditioned body will overreact to the same stimulus, flooding the mind with so much alarm that clarity becomes impossible. Many people blame themselves for being mentally weak when the real problem is physical. They aren't weak. They're trying to navigate a storm in a boat that was never built for the open ocean. And when the boat can't handle the waves, the mind panics, tries to control everything, and eventually burns out. Jung didn't advocate for escaping the world to preserve your peace. He spoke of becoming strong enough to stay in the world. Training your body, in this context, isn't about aesthetics or athletic achievement. It's about teaching your nervous system one fundamental lesson. Tension is not the same as danger. A faster heartbeat doesn't mean collapse. Fatigue doesn't mean you have to stop. When your body learns this through the real experience of exertion and recovery, your mind stops panicking every time pressure appears. Think of it like the foundation of a skyscraper. You can build the upper floors with incredible artistry and detail, but if the foundation is weak, the whole thing crumbles in the first tremor. Training the body isn't decorating your spiritual life. It's reinforcing the foundation. When the foundation is solid, you don't have to brace yourself against every fluctuation in the wind. You stand firm. The key is that this isn't about fighting yourself. Jung never saw discipline as punishment. He saw it as aligning with your own nature. A healthy body is a body that is used as it was designed to be used, moved, loaded, and then allowed to recover. When you ignore this, the body doesn't rest. It accumulates tension, and that accumulated tension will eventually find its way into your psyche as anxiety, irritability, and a low-grade sense of threat. Training the body also changes how you show up. When your body is strong enough, you don't have to clench your jaw to stay calm. Stability is just there. You don't have to force your emotions down. They have a container big enough to move through you without sweeping you away. The body becomes the mind's true partner instead of its neglected, volatile sibling. The core of this habit isn't about which gym you go to. It's about a simple attitude shift. Do you give your body an active role in your life, or is it just a vehicle to carry your head around? When the body is only a taxi, it will never be strong enough to carry the weight of a full life. When you train it as an essential part of your becoming, it becomes the unshakable ground for everything else. Tomorrow morning, when you wake up, take 1 minute. Not to exercise, but to simply let your body know it hasn't been forgotten. Feel your feet on the floor. Take 1 deep breath. Stretch. Just a simple reminder. Today, you don't have to carry life alone. Number 6. Align with the self to drop the armor. You've done the work. You're grounded in your body. Your words are intentional. You've faced your shadow. Your attention is gathered, and your body is strong enough to bear life's weight. So why is there still a flicker of tension? Because the final frontier isn't about enduring the world. It's about realizing you no longer need to. The residual tightness isn't from external pressure. It's from living out of alignment with your deepest self. In Jungian psychology, this points directly to the concept of the self, not the ego, not the roles you play, but the total, integrated you. The self isn't something you build. It's what's left when you stop covering it up. Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not a better version by society's standards, but your own original shape. Many people live in a state of quiet exhaustion without understanding why. They're not weak or lazy. They're often highly responsible and disciplined. But every day, they burn an invisible amount of energy just to hold themselves in place. They adjust their personality, filter their words, suppress their natural reactions. Not because they're fake, but because the life they're living doesn't fit the person they are inside. It's like wearing shoes that are the wrong size. You can walk, but every step is a small misery. You see this in everyday moments. The person who's praised for being so agreeable, yet feels hollow after every social interaction. The reliable employee who comes home and collapses, unable to engage with their own family. No crisis, just a slow, quiet erosion. Jung called this the trap of the persona. The persona is necessary for navigating the world, but it was never meant to be a permanent residence. When you live in it too long, the psyche starts to speak. Not through pain, at first. Through boredom, fatigue, a loss of aliveness. These aren't signs that you're broken. They're signals that you're standing in the wrong place. Living in alignment with yourself doesn't mean smashing all your responsibilities or acting on every impulse. It means that you stop forcing yourself to be someone else in order to do what you're doing. When what you say, what you choose, and what you feel are no longer at war, the tension dissolves. Think of it like finding the right rhythm in a dance. If you're offbeat, every move is an effort. You stumble, you compensate, you brace yourself. But when you find the beat, the dance becomes fluid. The steps aren't necessarily easier, but they aren't a struggle. Living out of alignment with the self is dancing offbeat for your entire life. You're always bracing, always trying to keep up. Living true to yourself isn't immediately comfortable. Sometimes it demands hard choices, telling a difficult truth, setting a boundary, being misunderstood. But unlike the bracing that comes from fear, these choices don't drain you. They might be difficult, but they feel real. They replenish you. When you live out of alignment, you need constant external approval to feel okay. Praise lifts you, criticism crushes you. But when you live closer to your center, your worth is no longer at the mercy of the crowd. You still listen, you still connect, but you don't trade your inner sense of rightness for a moment of acceptance. And that refusal to trade creates a different kind of presence. Calm, clear, and utterly trustworthy. Jung saw the self as an ordering principle. When you stand near it, things naturally fall into place. You don't need to control as much. You don't need to manage your image. You can be present with your full range, strong and weak, certain and uncertain. And that wholeness creates a magnetism that requires no effort. The biggest difference you'll feel is that you no longer have to perform. You don't need to psych yourself up before a meeting. You don't need to put on psychological armor before walking out the door. You still choose your words carefully. You still hold boundaries, but not through tension. You just stand more firmly within yourself. And from that place, the world is no longer something you have to fight. Your true self doesn't shout. It speaks in small signals. A feeling of lightness when you speak your truth, a contraction when you betray yourself, a sense of steadiness when you're in the right place. If you ignore these signals, the psyche will eventually find louder ways to get your attention. But if you learn to listen early, the return home is quiet and far less painful. From here, there's not much left to strive for. It's just about how you show up in the small choices every day. When you speak, when you agree to something, when you enter a relationship, just notice. Does something inside you open or close? You don't need to fix it. Just notice. When that noticing becomes steady, you'll find yourself less tense. Not because life got lighter, but because you're finally standing in the right place to live it. Conclusion. The 6 habits we've explored aren't techniques to make you more attractive in the eyes of others. They're anchors to help you stop leaking energy, stop living in fragments, and stop bracing for a life you were meant to live fully. When your body and mind move in unison, when your words are rooted in your center, and when your life is aligned with your true self, magnetism isn't something you pursue. It's the natural byproduct of your presence. No need to prove, no need to display. Just a depth that others can finally feel. In the spirit of Jung, true mental strength isn't about controlling your external world. It's about the unshakable ability to remain at home within yourself. And real attractiveness isn't about becoming someone. It's about finally stopping the exhausting habit of living out of alignment with the person you've always been. When the inner war ends, the outer world softens. The change might not be instant, but the journey back to yourself has already begun. If this exploration resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Winds of Thought for more journeys into the depths of the self. Your support helps us continue to create content that matters.